In this video, I'm going to share advice with you on how to pass NVIDIA's job interviews. And let me just start by saying that unless you're a subject matter expert in what you do, you have no chance in passing their job interviews. Okay, so if you're applying, especially if you're applying for a highly technical type of role, your subject matter expertise is something to start with. It's the bare minimum you could do, all right? But other than that, also in my experience, NVIDIA's interviews have been quite scrappy. You know, the overall process isn't necessarily too well organized. I've even heard of instances where people were told, expect us to get back to you within 2 weeks to give an outcome of a phone screening round. Well, in fact, they got back to that person 2 days later, so it wasn't as bad. There's also a varying number of interview rounds. The least I've heard for a successful candidate was 4. The most I've heard was 8. Okay, so 8 rounds to pass these interviews, as you would expect, because of these challenging job market. The hiring cycles will take longer, so don't expect them to hurry too much unless you are in luck and they are really interested in you, a candidate for that role. Thinking of data center related jobs, which seems to be a trend nowadays, right? The next thing you should keep in mind is that what impressed me positively about these experiences were the quality of their interviewers. Okay, so they employ their best people to interview candidates. And this is a very good sign, especially for people who prepare these interviews for real. Okay, because what happens is that unless you're talking to a highly qualified individual in the domain or another subject matter expert, it will be very hard for someone to screen you on your proficiency to be able to do the job with the company. So having NVIDIA employing only their best to screen candidates, I believe that's a very positive sign. Last but not least, I'd like to highlight here that even though NVIDIA's emphasis on subject matter expertise is obviously a core for their job interviews, there are a number of interviews which will be either half technical, half behavioral, either fully behavioral. I am yet to hear from an interviewee who did not receive behavioral questions for at least 40% of their interview. Now, probably a little clarification here. What do I mean by behavioral interviews? I basically mean non-technical interview questions. Okay, so 40% of the time would be on the conservative side, but it's possible that you will receive 80% of your questions on the behavioral side, on the non-technical side, especially if you're working with customers, if you're working in sales, technical customer program management would be something that comes to mind. So depending on the role, the amount of behavior interviewing skills will matter proportionally with the type of the role you're applying for. In my experience, if you want, for a high-performing job, if you want to do well, if you want to get into these types of companies, not sufficient that you are a subject matter expert, but that's a starting point for a broader conversation. And whether you have you build your listening skills, that I believe is the best combination. So technical expertise and behavior interviewing skills together with great listening skills, and I believe this is the formula for success for NVIDIA's job interviews. I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.